Welcome back, everybody. My name is Tucker, and in today's video, I'm going to be looking back at some 2011 NBA draft grades over here on NBADraft.net. Obviously, I did this with the 2015 draft class not too long ago, and if there are any other classes you guys would like to see, then please let me know down in the comment section below. I chose to do 2011 just because it's a really interesting draft class. I've already made a video about this before. There's a lot of guys, especially later on in the draft, that I'm really interested to see the evaluations on and the grades on. So in completely different fashion than what I did with the 2015 video, I went through the top 10 in that video. In this one, I've picked out 8 or 9 or 10 guys that I just want to see what they had to say, not necessarily inside the top 10 because the more interesting players in this class came outside of the top 10. But we're going to begin with the first overall pick being Kyrie Irving. Kyrie was rated as a 97 overall, and his NBA comparison was Mike Conley/Chris Paul. It says a true point guard with a great feel for the game, charismatic player with the imagination and mindset to become a standout point guard at the NBA level, has a chance to be special. Facilitator shows the ability to make those around him better. Great vision and passing skills. This is interesting to me just because Kyrie is an outstanding scorer, but one of the knocks on him throughout his career at certain points has been his lack of an ability as a facilitator. Not necessarily that he's not a good passer, but more so that he's not that much of a willing passer. And actually, one of the critiques of him has been that he hasn't made players around him better at times. So it's just interesting to see that in there as one of his strengths, as well as the comparisons being Mike Conley and Chris Paul, two guys we think so more of pass-first guys than score-first guys. So his weaknesses, durability is a legitimate concern. That's proven to be true. After he missed all but 8 games of his freshman season heading into postseason, the big question is whether this was a fluke or indicative of a bigger problem. Lack of experience at the college level is concerning, considering how difficult it is to master the position at the next level. Kyrie had a great start to his career in Cleveland statistically, but was never really able to lift up those Cleveland teams to bigger heights until obviously LeBron got there. So the thing about him needing some time at the professional level to really grow into an outstanding top-level NBA point guard was true, but we never really know what would have happened if LeBron never came back and how Kyrie would have potentially elevated those Cleveland teams. And like I said, the durability issues have come to fruition at the NBA level. Next up now is going to be the player at the number 2 spot, just because Derrick Williams was drafted 2nd overall, didn't have a very good career at all. And then we're going to get to some of the other guys that are a little bit more successful. He was rated as a 99 overall on NBADraft.net. His NBA comparisons were David West and Michael Beasley. It says Williams' strengths in his 2 years at Arizona were phenomenal as he managed to improve on his excellent freshman stats across the board. In terms of physical tools, Williams has very good size for a combo forward, boasting a very strong 6'9", 248 frame with a long 7'1" wingspan added for good measure. Very fluid and smooth athlete who also flashes explosiveness, leaping off of 2 feet. The one thing that I notice in that whole first little section about his strengths is it doesn't say anything about his skill level in terms of shooting, passing, scoring, defensively, any of that. Talks about how great of an athlete he is, which is true. Nobody can question the fact that Derrick Williams was a great athlete. Good size, good strength, good length. But at the NBA level, his skill level just never really developed the way that people hoped that it would from someone that is supposed to be a combo forward, hopefully able to stretch the floor, attack the rim, and provide versatility, and that just never really happened. Weaknesses, considered a combo forward, and there are some questions about what position he will defend with most effectiveness. Remember, this is 2011, back when being seen as a tweener was seen more as a negative because positions were much more solidified, small forward, power forward, center, things like that. Insists that he sees himself as a small forward more than a power forward, but he's never really played small forward dating back to high school and would certainly be a shaky defender against NBA small forwards. I think you'd struggle to find from probably 2015 on a draft prospect evaluation including positions like small forward and power forward. Most people go with numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5, or just guards, wings, and big. So it's just interesting to see that contrast. Obviously, like I said, Williams' career just never really panned out. He spent 2 seasons, I think, in Minnesota, ended up bouncing around to a couple of different teams, and just never really, with the exception of, occasional stops, never really solidified himself as even a role player in the NBA. Never really certainly showed star potential. Occasionally, like I said, uses size and strength, occasional three-point shooting ability to be a rotation player for some teams. But the most part, was a complete bust as a number 2 overall pick and someone rated as a 99 overall prospect. All right, now let's move on to Kemba Walker, someone that is an all-NBA caliber player, one of the better scorers in the league, rated as a 95 overall on NBADraft.net. His NBA comparisons are Tim Hardaway and Bobby Jackson. It says Walker's game is marked by electricity and explosiveness, plays with an undeniable burst, seemingly moving in warp speed while everyone else is standing still, yet he remains for the most part under control with the ball in a string. Working in his favor is a freakish blend of raw speed, breathtaking quickness, ultra aggression, and sneaky power. Obviously, Kemba was a great college player, led UConn to a national championship and a crazy run through not only the NCAA tournament, but as well as the Big East tournament. And I think really the only thing that people had issue with, and this is probably going to come up in the weaknesses, is just his size. If he was 6'4", he probably would have gone much, much higher in the draft. Nobody really questioned his ability to score, to shoot, to get to the rim. It was more just about concerns about his size and how that would affect his offensive game, as well as how good he would be as a defender. Weaknesses, his measurement of 6'1" with shoes was a win, but he remains an undersized commodity. His standing reach of 7 foot, whatever that is, his standing reach of 7.5 is the same as 5'10" point guard Isaiah Thomas. Defending the new breed of NBA point guards will be a severe challenge. He takes a ton of hits on his 184-pound frame, and while he's been anything but fragile, it's a concern over the long haul. Now, injuries have not really been an issue for Kemba Walker, but you can see why people might have thought that it would be with his not only small size, but also not that big of a frame. But in the end, it took a little bit for him to become the player that he is now. Really worked on his three-point shot the last couple of seasons, and that's kind of opened up the rest of his game. And he is really the only thing the Hornets have going for them. It's going to get a huge payday this offseason. But you can't really hate on, this evaluation before the draft too much, because this is pretty much how everybody saw him. Super quick, great athlete, really, really fast and could get to the rim, good in the mid-range, not outstanding from three, and size was definitely a concern, but he's been able to overcome that at the NBA level, certainly, and is one of the better scorers that we have in the league. Next up now, we're actually covering 9, 10, and 11, just because I think those are really interesting ones to look at, and this one might be my favorite to look at, and that's Jimmer Fredette, who went number 10 overall, technically to Milwaukee, but there were trades involved, and he ended up in Sacramento, rated as a 93 overall, and his NBA comparison was Mark Price and Eddie House. Strengths, an absolutely relentless scorer. Led the nation in points per game with 28.9. Wide array of ways, there we go, to put the ball in the basket. Great size and strength for point guard, strong finisher around the rim, uncanny shooting ability, volume shooter that maintains efficiency, averaged 3.3 three-pointers made per game in his senior season on nearly 40% shooting. Weaknesses, a very poor defender at BYU. His team couldn't afford for him to get in foul trouble, which may account for his lackluster defensive effort. Struggles to close out on shooters as the primary offensive option on his team. Hasn't proven he can be a pass-first point guard. Obviously, nothing ever really worked out for Jimmer in the NBA. He's crushing it over in China because they just score like 180 points a game. And he shoots from ridiculous range over there in China. But everything that we kind of thought would go wrong with Jimmer ended up going wrong, because his shot was kind of there, but a lot of the stuff that he did at BYU was off the dribble. He had the ball in his hands a ton, and that just wasn't what he was asked to do. Now, he didn't end up in a great situation in Sacramento, but his shot just never really translated to the league the way that it did to BYU, and just that magic that he had just wasn't there in the league. Obviously, defensively, he was always going to have issues guarding against some of the better guards in the league and some of the stronger, quicker guards in the league. I don't know, maybe he'll eventually make a comeback, but it seems like he's going to end up staying in China or overseas in general. Next up now, drafted 11 overall, is Klay Thompson, who was a 93 overall prospect in this draft, according to the site. So Klay Thompson and Jimmer Fredette were rated the same overall rating on this site. His NBA comparison was Marco Bellinelli. He says, one of the top pure shooters on the college level, prolific outside shooter with a defined role for the NBA level. Right-hander who at 6'6" with long arms has good size for the NBA two-guard position. Shows an excellent feel for having been around the game his entire life, understands his limitations, and plays within his game well. Weaknesses, an average athlete who plays below the rim. He's a momentum athlete in the sense that he shows solid athleticism when he has momentum moving towards the rim, much better in the half court than the open floor. His lack of elite athleticism gets exposed in the transition game. Blah, 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 blah. Long athletic defenders can give him trouble. And the interesting thing to me about this evaluation is it only really mentions his defensive ability in one section. It says 1.6 steals per game as a senior, showed his progression as a defender / anticipation. And Klay Thompson is one of the best shooters that the league has ever seen, and it outlines that as one of the top pure shooters at the college level. But especially once the Warriors got really, really good, Klay Thompson is an outstanding defender at the two-guard position, and regularly was taking those assignments away from Steph Curry when they were playing some of the better guards, specifically point guards in the NBA. And it's just interesting that wasn't something that was projected for him. He's obviously not an outstanding athlete at the time, nor is he an outstanding athlete now, but he's got good size, good length, I don't know why people didn't see that coming from him. Certainly I wasn't evaluating guys in the 2011 draft, but it's just interesting how good of a defender he ended up becoming that people didn't really see coming. But all the other stuff, this site certainly called top level shooter, not an outstanding athlete. And I don't really know that they could have anticipated, like, it's not like they're going to put in this evaluation going to become one of the best shooters in NBA history, but he certainly cemented himself as that. Moving on now to what ended up becoming the best player in this draft class. Kawhi Leonard rated as a 93 overall. NBA comparison, Luka Mbamute / Gerald Wallace. Strengths, a hybrid forward with terrific length. He has a high motor and plays the game with a lot of energy. Spends the majority of the time in the perimeter, but occasionally shows the ability to play with his back to the basket. Uses an effective turnaround jumper inside when posting up. Weaknesses, does not have one aspect offensively that stands out or which allows him to consistently score the ball. With his size and frame, he almost certainly will be a perimeter player at the next level, but he lacks the polish and skill necessary to consistently operate on the wing. Now, I kind of see what they were going for with the NBA comparison stuff, because Kawhi was not seen as someone that was this outstanding offensive player at the college level. So Mbamute and Gerald Wallace were guys that hustled, guys that defended, and just kind of were there offensively. Gerald Wallace obviously better offensively than Mbamute getting to the rim, but didn't really have outstanding skill levels at the offensive end, and that's something that Kawhi obviously ended up developing. It's not something that happened for him initially. It's something that progressively he got better at shooting, progressively he got better scoring off the bounce, and has turned into now, a very regular 21, 22, 23, 24 point per game scorer in the league, in addition to being probably the best perimeter defender in the league. And like I said, this is one that, like, you can't blame these guys for getting this wrong. Like, there's no way that someone was going to say before the draft that Kawhi Leonard was going to become a top 5 NBA player, the best defender in the league. And the progression offensively is what nobody really could have anticipated. You can pinpoint that to him being in San Antonio for the first handful of years of his career if you'd like to, but he's continued it in Toronto. His development has simply been incredible. All right, I've got 3 guys left now on my list, and the next one I want to look at is someone that's become increasingly interesting this season, and that is Tobias Harris. Rated as a 92 overall. NBA comparison, Chris Humphries and Glenn Rice. That is incredibly painful to look at as a Nets fan, as someone that's watched way more basketball of Chris Humphries than I really would have hoped to ever watch. That's a rough comparison. Strengths, Tobias is a talented combo forward with a skill set suited for NBA play. He has good versatility and a great feel for the game. His ability to handle the ball makes him a tough matchup for opposing bigs. However, he'll need to develop a consistent outside stroke to make him more of a threat off the dribble. Weaknesses, at 6'8", he's slightly undersized at the power forward position. Again, having guys as tweeners was seen as a negative at this point, and lacks the athleticism, explosiveness, and foot speed to guard against NBA small forwards. What ended up working out for Tobias Harris, unfortunately, he moved around to a ton of different teams, and that theme has continued over the last handful of years, but he's just so much more skilled than I think people anticipated him being as a scorer, as a shooter, sometimes even as a facilitator to go along with the size and strength that he has. Still progressing as a defender, but just so much versatility that's really perfect for the way the league is now, and I can't get over the Chris Humphries comparison. I don't understand where that's coming from. Like, obviously they saw him as a power forward at the time, and someone that was going to be able to rebound effectively and occasionally, do some things offensively. But then the Glenn Rice comparison's there. He's obviously a skilled, combo forward kind of guy. So that's just 2 completely different ends of the spectrum as a comparison. It's crazy that Chris Humphries ended up being who they compared him to. 2 guys left now. Each of them were actually picked last in the respective rounds in which they were picked in. And the last pick of the first round is Jimmy Butler out of Marquette, rated as a 88 overall. Look at that picture. That's funny. Rated as a 88 overall player here. Says strengths, a well-rounded forward with great qualities for a future role player. Solid athlete with nice overall quickness, great length, extremely active on both ends of the court. Impressive player in transition, uses his good strength and body control to finish plays around the rim. Weaknesses, good all-around player but lacks any one great skill. Fits the jack-of-all-trades, master-of-none mold, not a standout athlete, hasn't proven that he consistently create offense for himself. Obviously, Jimmy Butler became much more than a role player, much like a lot of the other guys really in this draft, guys like Kawhi. You could even make the case that some people saw Kemba as a future role player, 6-man kind of guy. And a lot of these guys turned themselves into a lot more than what we expected they would be in this draft class. Future role player, they probably saw him as a guy that would improve his three-point shot, defend, occasionally play make, but mostly play off the ball. In his first couple of seasons, that was true. And then he obviously broke out once he got the opportunity, once Derrick Rose began to slow down because of his injuries, then obviously moved to the Timberwolves and now to Philly. It doesn't say anything on here about, temperament. It says smart kid with a good head on his shoulders and a strong work ethic. But obviously in his last couple of stops, he has created issues within his team. Wherever you want to place the fault on that is fine. But he obviously ended up really, really working hard. It talks about his good work ethic, so that is probably where that came from. The part about him not being able to create shots for himself ended up not being true at all. That's one of his primary skills. So it's interesting to see him as probably a top 4 or 5 player, probably top 4 player in this draft class, rated as an 88 overall at the time of the draft. But now we're going to get to the big one. Isaiah Thomas, drafted 60th overall, last pick in the draft, rated as an 86 overall in this draft class. NBA comparison, Jerome Randall. Very, very small strengths and weaknesses section here. Strengths, crafty scorer who can find holes in the defense. Passing skills have developed nicely over the past season. Has a knack for coming up big in the clutch. Good speed, excellent quickness with a first step that allows him to blow by defenders. Natural leader, measured better than expected at the combine. Weaknesses, very small, even for a point guard. Ability to get inside will largely be negated by the size of NBA defenders. Shoot first point guard who sometimes struggles with turnovers will struggle to match up with NBA guards. Defensively, sometimes hurts his team by trying to make highlight reel plays instead of making the simple pass. Now, I will say, the beginning of Isaiah Thomas's career is a lot better than it has been the last, 2 seasons, basically. Started off well with the Kings, was able to score. They didn't really see him as a long-term piece. Moved to Phoenix. Weird fit with Eric Bledsoe and Goran Dragic. Still put up good numbers. And then obviously once he came to Boston was when he truly broke out. Had the all-NBA season that he did and was honestly one of the best players in the league that season, which was, I believe, 16-17 because Kyrie got traded in 17. Then spent some time with the Cavs, with the Lakers, and now with the Nuggets. And he's not playing very well with the Nuggets since he came back. He's probably not going to be in their playoff rotation. But with a guy that was the last pick in the second round, he's had an outstanding career. These strengths and weaknesses ended up becoming true. Still not a very good defender. You can't really expect a guy that's 5'9" to be an outstanding defender. Strengths, great scorer, can really shoot the ball, especially once he got to Boston. Really worked on his three-point shot. Got to the rim basically whenever he wanted. Had all those crafty little shots that small guys need to have in the lane. And it's just the injury thing. Like when you are someone like Isaiah Thomas that relies so much on speed and quickness, and then you have the hip injury that he did that really just sapped a lot of that away and is something he's still trying to come back from here now 2 years later, basically. That's tough, but you got to give it to him for being as good as he was. And if he never gets back to that, that's going to be really tough for him, but someone that overcame a lot throughout his NBA career and certainly lived up to bigger expectations than this 86 overall grade at the time of the draft would have indicated. And yeah, there you have it. Those are looking back at some of the 2011 NBA draft grades via NBADraft.net. Let me know down in the comment section below which NBA draft classes you guys would like to see me try in the future. I'm certainly going to be doing a lot more of these. But with all that said, once again, my name is Tucker. I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you missed any of my previous videos, then be sure to check out the boxes on screen. Thanks again, and I'll see you all next time.